So Budget 2023 is round the corner, and what really are the budget expectations of India Inc.? I have with me FICCI President, Mr. Subhrakant Panda. Mr. Panda, thank you very much for your time, sir. Happy Republic Day to you. My first question, what really are FICCI's expectations and suggestions to the government from this budget? Like a broad picture.
Good evening, Sanket, and first of all, a very happy Republic Day to you and all your viewers. It's a pleasure to be on this show with you to talk about FICCI's recommendations for the budget, which is to be presented in a few days. So let me talk about the broad macro picture first, which is that, as I have repeatedly said, I think India is in a very good position, having played its card well during the pandemic, utilizing the time for reforms. And a lot of that is playing out in terms of the enhanced GST collections that you see, which is, I think, year on year up close to about 30%. And that apart, you are seeing the impact of measures which have been taken to introduce the PLI schemes with the mobile sector in particular, I think doing spectacularly well with exports picking up significantly. So I think India is well placed from that point of view, but I think we also have to be cognizant of the fact that globally the picture is a little gloomy, with growth having halved in 2022, and 1/3 of the world's economy likely to face recession, and of course inflationary challenges all around us. So keeping that in mind, I think this will be a budget which has to be a continuation of all the good work that has been done. And indeed, speaking at FICCI's 95th AGM last month, the finance minister had made this point that the budget will follow the template of this government, which has been set in the last 7-8 years, and really, put in motion what we expect to achieve in the next 25 years, which is India's Amrit Kal, which is to become a developed nation, high-income nation by the time 2047 comes around. So in that context, I think couple of expectations, which is that the government has done the heavy lifting during the pandemic, which only it could have, because I think private sector capex was muted at that point in time. Mm-hmm. And while private sector investment is picking up, I think this budget is sort of going to be that transition period where the government will have to keep on focusing on public capex. So we expect an increase in the allocation, and perhaps the 10 trillion rupee mark is a number that we expect to see in the budget. That apart, I think what we're looking at is measures to carry on with the effort to enhance the ease of doing business. So from a FICCI perspective, we have suggested measures such as simplification of TDS and TCS, which will without affecting revenue collection, I think make it a lot simpler in terms of doing away with classification disputes. And we have, of course, also suggested that dispute resolution mechanism be opened up to all, rather than keeping it at a limited number. And finally, I think this is a golden opportunity for India to attract global supply chains. I think geopolitical developments have given us that opportunity again, and the world is looking at China +1. And we have to do all that is required to seize the opportunity before us. And that's where we've suggested certain measures like, for example, the taxation rate for new manufacturing companies, which under Section 115 BAB is set at about, I think, 15% plus surcharges. That should be extended for a clean 5 years, so as to give that policy certainty to global corporations looking to move their operations to India.
Okay. Mr. Panda, let's break this conversation, the next couple of questions in some parts, right? You've
Sure.
given and submitted a memorandum also, FICCI, and it talks about 3 areas where FICCI has given its suggestions. So let's deal with inflation management first.
Right.
See, inflation continues to remain a challenge. It continues to remain above the, between the 4 to 6% mark. It breaches the 6% mark also. In a situation like this, what can be done? What are your suggestions?
So, I think in as much as inflation is concerned, it is clearly a global phenomena. And in fact, I would posit that India has done much better than developed economies because of the timing and quantum of the stimulus measures. because wherever there was, I think, an excess of easy money flowing into the system, that is where inflation has been extremely persistent and hard to tackle. That's not to say that India hasn't had to face up to inflation, but as you know, it's mostly imported, and fortunately, I think with commodity prices easing a little bit, especially as far as oil is concerned, that has helped inflation. Now, retail inflation is back within the central bank's band of 4% plus minus 2. So the last two readings have been below 6%, and which is something which is certainly comforting. Now, that's not to say that the fight against inflation is over. As the Reserve Bank governor has very clearly said, I think it's something that we have to keep a watchful eye on. I think from an inflation management point of view, we are going to be led more by what is happening externally as opposed to what is the case internally. So it is a question of keeping an eye on geopolitical developments, because clearly, for example, the Russia-Ukraine conflict is inflicting fiscal pain much beyond the actual area of the conflict. But having said that, I think keeping an eye on commodity is something which is commodity prices is something which is critical. But from an active point of view, I think
Mr. Panda,
broadly. Yeah.
Mr. Panda, you mentioned external factors, and I noticed in your report very interestingly where you say that apart from streamlining of the platforms, there should be a global market intelligence mechanism and a dedicated custom clearance lane for e-commerce also. These are also part of the suggestions made by FICCI.
Right.
How do you think this helps? And what exactly does global market intelligence mechanism mean?
So look, broadly, I think let me go beyond the specific wording what is mentioned there. Let's talk about the intent. Look, India has the advantage of a large unified domestic market, which is a very strong factor in our favor. But equally, exports are very relevant, and exports have done very well. If you look at 2021-22, we crossed the $400 billion mark in terms of merchandise exports. But having said that, of late there has been a little bit of pressure, and that is clearly on account of consuming economies like the US and Europe being under pressure with all that they're going through, especially on the inflation front. So I think all the measures we have suggested really has to do with ease of doing business, to ensure that exports are on the fast track or on the fast lane, and the process that exporters have to go through to make their exports, to claim drawbacks, etc., is smoothened out as much as possible. In fact, the Commerce and Industry Minister is holding several meetings. From what I understand, I'm going to be attending one of them over the weekend. So these are the sort of, I think, hands-on adjustment, which may be a hands-on approach to make adjustments which are required to ensure that when it comes to exports, which are a critical part of our growth going ahead, that we do everything that is possible to smoothen it out for those which are part of the system.
Mr. Panda, my final question will be on the MSME sector. We know that this sector suffered the most during the first when the GST was implemented, then also during the pandemic, and the suffering during the pandemic was pretty bad. FICCI made a lot of suggestions back then also. The government announced a relief package also in the form of loans to be given out to the MSME sector. There have been multiple reports on the success or failure of those loans also. What more can be done, and what are your suggestions for a thriving MSME sector, which is really the backbone if we want to boost manufacturing, if we want to boost the economy?
Oh, absolutely. I think the MSME sector is critical everywhere, and especially in India, because it is the backbone of manufacturing. It is the the employment provider in large numbers. Yes, it is true that like it was world over, I think industry in general and suffered during the pandemic period. And MSMEs from that point of view, do not have the resilience of large corporations to that extent. But having said that, I think there was a there was a significant helping hand extended by the government in terms of the emergency credit line which was provided, and that really ensured that the impact of the pandemic was minimized. But going ahead, I think it is important for us to focus on MSMEs and see what can be done to give them a boost. From a FICCI perspective, something that we are looking at doing is to actually understand their awareness of and preparedness for issues like sustainability and digitalization, which are very important. And again, if you look at it from an industry viewpoint, it is, your entire value chain needs to be compliant if you're really going to move the needle when it comes to sustainability. And digitalization, which is an area where India has done tremendously well, I think can be a big have a big impact as far as MSMEs are concerned, because when it comes to their filing requirements, when it comes to their various other interfaces with the government, with customers, etc., that is where digitalization can make a huge difference. But we have to make sure that MSMEs get that hand-holding which is necessary, so that they're, the larger companies all know what needs to be done, and if they don't, they know which consultants to go to and what questions to ask. From a FICCI perspective, given that we have a huge outreach to MSMEs, what we are going to be looking to do this year to sort of aid and abet the government's efforts is see how we can help move MSMEs along the path of, as I said, sustainability and digitalization.
Mr. Panda, my final question related to MSMEs only. I'm quoting your report, the memorandum, which says among the suggestions that there should be a change in the classification norms of MSMEs for NPAs. Would you help us understand what this means?
So, look, in as much as the detailed, I think recommendation is concerned, that is there with you. But broadly, what we have said is that there are fairly strict regulations with regard to NPA recognition, as it should be, because that has helped cleanse up the system. I mean, issues like the IBC law have been, which is again a major reform and has had a lot of a role to play in cleansing up the system. But when it comes to MSMEs, perhaps there is grounds to give a little bit of relaxation, because again, as I said, nothing extraordinary in terms of letting anyone get away with NPAs, but perhaps a little bit of relaxation when it comes to those at the bottom of the pyramid, without really compromising on what needs to be done in terms of ensuring the sanctity and the stability of the banking system. That is the spirit of the suggestion that we have made.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Panda, for joining us and sharing the
Pleasure.
industry's view. Thank you so much.